Hello chess friends, this is FIDE Master Valeri Lilov, and right now I'd like to make a short video conclusion on the cheating scandal that took place in Zadar, Croatia last December. Last week I've uploaded a video with a thorough analysis and some examination of the key facts and proofs that led to the actual suspicion of the Bulgarian chess player and what happened out there. The thing is that after I released this video, I received many different emails and comments of people who either agreed with that and some people who disagreed. The truth is that most of the strong chess players, master level and above, agreed with me that cheating actually took place and all the actual proofs are pretty conclusive. Nevertheless, many less rated players or people who are not as experienced expressed the doubt that many of the proofs are not that conclusive, and perhaps that was more of an accusation without a real significant factors provided to sustain that theory. Now, one of the things that I want to say is that what I'm suggesting, and I was suggesting back then, and I'm still suggesting it, is not a theory, but it is just the way how things are. And most masters will agree, because you see, essentially, when you get to a higher level in chess, you get to understand the way how people think when they play, and how certain ways of playing are just not possible. Now, most of the less rated players don't get to understand the situation so well, so for them certain things that are not correct look rather logical. But I don't want to really spend time on this right now. What I would like to do is to provide some concise answers to certain comments and different doubts that were expressed by people regarding that case. So I believe that this is going to clarify the situation a little bit more, and that will lead to the actual conclusion of this case. Now, there was a comment in one of the most recent chess-based articles that was by Pablo Pena, who wrote, I would be wary of casting judgment too quickly. I was an expert last year when I took clear first over Grandmaster Hachikan and International Master Jack Peters. If you look at the wall chart, it looks loop-sided with a 2100 winning clear first and other places awarded to 2500. Okay, I don't want to read the whole text. Here we have it. And basically what he said in the end is chess learning isn't necessarily incremental. I certainly wasn't cheating. Sometimes a player has just been studying hard and gets past a certain plateau. Now, I agree with that, and I do totally agree that even an 1800 can sometimes win a master level player. For example, in 2008, I played a pretty decent player rated around 2000 who sacrificed the queen and actually led a beautiful attack, and that was one of the most amazing games that I've lost. So what I mean with this is that sometimes miracles happen, but winning 3 of the top tournament 2600 grandmasters. Now, for those of you who don't know what 2600 means, it's a really big rating, and it's an amazing player. So 2600 grandmasters are extremely strong. Winning 3 of them with an extremely powerful attack, in each of these 3 games right after the opening stage. So we're not talking here about just an opening preparation. We are talking about an early middle game quick outplaying in a powerful tactical matter. Now, some people used to say, okay, well, maybe the grandmaster had a bad day. Can 3 grandmasters have a bad day? Can all the people with above 2400 that he won in that tournament have a bad day at the same time in the same tournament, and so that they can lose in the same way and just in the way as no man can actually win against such strong opponents? I highly doubt that. So I have to say that improving is a different factor. Here we have something abnormal. There is a situation where certain way of playing is applied, and certain kind of defeats that aren't supposed to happen like that do take place. Now, some will doubt that, and I agree with that. Again, everybody has its own opinion. I just want to share what my opinion is and the way how I understand the situation. So, there is a way how someone wins a grandmaster, even 2, but that happens just on occasion. This was very purposeful, and it happened in a few tournaments as well. Now, one of the second doubts was, did he really use some sort of a ear speaker or something like that that people used to contact him in order to bring up the moves? Now, I want to say that I'm not convinced anymore about that theory, because I was contacted by witnesses and other people who did tell me that the real way how he was receiving moves was through a sensor. You see, there are, as in the end of this chess-based article, it's written that the earphone is not the only way to transmit moves. There are other ways as well that can provide moves to a certain player. So he can just take that sign, like for example 5-5 means e5 or something like that, that actually shows what exactly the move is with the chess notation. So I believe that this is the way how the receiving of moves happen. Another problem that was discussed is what happened with the streaming. Was it cheating when the games were streamed online? I don't believe that this was the way. You see, streaming the games online can always fail. Like, moves can get delayed. Sometimes the broadcast will just stop. So it is not the way how that cheating took place. I believe it took place with a camera. You see, certain type of a camera, whether it was in place of the glass lens or it was somewhere near his jacket or in his teeth, I really don't know that, and I cannot know it. But basically what happened, in my opinion, is that when the search took place on round 8, the game versus Perdovic, before the search, that player managed to remove the actual camera. And so when the search took place, they didn't find anything about in him. So he managed to remove that, and when they made the search and they didn't find anything, he returned in the game, but he wasn't able to pick up that camera, wherever it was, wherever he managed to put it in. He removed it. He wasn't able to bring it back, so he played very poorly, just the way how he's usually playing, and the game was lost. So it's easy to understand that essentially there was a sensor for sending the moves back, but for transmitting the actual position, there was some sort of a camera that was small and was easy to remove. So before the actual search take place, essentially, he was able to remove that camera. That's why they didn't catch him. Because some people contacted me and they said, okay, Valeri, why didn't they catch him? Well, I believe that they didn't catch him because, you see, they didn't catch him on place. For instance, when the search is going to take place, they tell him, okay, now I want you to come with us, and we're going to search you in the other room. Now that's good, but you see, that gives time. And that time is used by the actual person who is committing that fraud to remove wherever his camera could be. Now that's not too difficult to do. So essentially, that is why if a search should take place, that should have taken place directly on the round, directly on the table. But of course that's another problem because that would disturb the other players. So that's why I believe they didn't find anything when the search took place. Now another interesting comment defending this man is by Dr. John O'Connell, who says who gives a couple of commentary. He says your news article offers no convincing evidence that this player was cheating, yet your news item has seriously damaged the good name and integrity of a young man, nor have you given this man a forum to defend his performance. Now, I just want to mention that there was a Bulgarian forum, and a few forums actually, where this man was given an opportunity to explain the situation. Instead, I have a proof that instead of that, he replied in a very offensive way that was just terrible. So he didn't give any details, any response, just some offending sentences, and he was banned as a result. So I think this says pretty much about what the defense is. So there is no such defense. On the other hand, the further comment says there is no justification to say he must have been cheating based on previous performances or because his moves are those of a strong chess computer. This is wrong. Every chess master is going to confirm that this is wrong. First of all, there is no possibility for the game of a chess player to change within 10 days from playing terribly versus people who are much lower on a regular basis and suddenly play in a perfect tactical direction against grandmaster opponents 10 days later, or strong players later, 10 days later. It's impossible. Okay, this is not possible. Also, Is there a chance for a strong player to match the strong player's moves to match those of the computer? There is, but not in that manner. You see, the stats of Ivanov's games show that he was following the computer moves to 100% each. Now, we do have many top grandmasters out there, like 27, 2800, and if you look and try to make the stats of these grandmasters and how much of the computer moves, which are supposed to be the strongest, they follow, you're going to see that probably they follow at most 80 to 85% of those moves or something similar, but you're never going to see 100% match. It's practically impossible. This is not possible. I can guarantee you. I'm a 2400 player. I've played a lot of grandmasters in my life, and all my life I've been studying chess. And I guarantee you this is impossible. Whoever says that this is possible probably doesn't have that good experience of understanding the difference between how a chess player, chess master is thinking, and how the computer is suggesting his analysis based on a pure calculation, which actually makes him quite perfect. Now, there was a very interesting comment by someone named Rajko Vujatovic from London that was saying these allegations are clearly nonsense, and it's most unfortunate Ivanov's name is being dragged into the public domain despite the lack of evidence. Okay, there are several thousand players with ELA rating 21 to 2300. Occasionally, it would be statistically expected that one of these players will have enough lucky breaks to achieve a performance 400 points above their rating. This is right, but now we have one little but here. The thing that makes this whole situation very suspecting is that it happened not in one but in two tournaments, and it happened in a very, very different manner. He was playing fast. He was actually following up only the moves that were suggested by the computer in a pretty tactical manner. There was no strategic outplanning. There was no even an immediate blunder of the opponents. You see, the trouble with me is that if those games were blunders, that's fine. I'd accept that. But this was a pure outplaying. Okay? This is not... We're not talking about here just about an occasional mistake made by a master, and out of a poor play he's losing. If you looked at our games slowly and check very carefully each one of the moments where the grandmaster's position was becoming weaker, you're going to find out that these players were just outplayed in a very gradual and effective manner, which led to an extremely powerful defeat. The next comment says these breaks could have taken from the poor play by the opponents that are easily to refute with natural moves. Right, but let's talk about natural moves. What does natural move mean? When a chess player is considering his move, he's often thinking about a plan and what move candidates or possibilities can follow that plan. Each of Ivanov's moves can be explained after they are seen, but the truth is that many of his moves are based on a pure calculation that is too deep for any player from his rank, and especially his past results, to see. Now, if you say that this was probably some sort of an enlightening, or just he was able to suddenly improve his calculations so much in 10 days, I'll agree, but I find that very less probable. Another one says, hard work and good opening preparation that helps to nullify the advantage of the grandmaster opponent. Yes, but not in 10 days. You see, I've been a chess trainer for quite a while, and I know that in 10 days you cannot jump from 2,000 to beating 2,600 players. Even if you work 24/7 all the time, that's not possible. For anyone, and I literally mean it, for anyone. Playing through Ivanov's games without any silicon companion display struck me as being entirely human, and you could be entirely justified with basic principles and motives. You can also justify the computer's play, but the trouble is that you should know the computer bases his moves in one logic, and the chess player, he can base them on another. So, except if you're not a very good specialist on knowing and what's the differences between the master's mind and the computer mind, it's a little hard to really get across seeing what the difference is. And believe me, there is a huge difference between his play and the one of any of the grandmasters playing in the tournament. Later on, that comment says, in some games his grandmaster opponents made incorrect sacrifice where Ivanov's response was natural, regardless of whether he understood at the time if his position was better. Now, this is a very different comment, and I don't understand it at all. In some cases, his Grandmaster's opponent made incorrect sacrifice, which is not exactly right. Sometimes they were making it just because they had nothing to do, but they were completely outplayed prior to that point. You see, and essentially, how can he make a natural or strong response if he doesn't understand it at all, or if he doesn't know if his position is better? This just doesn't make sense. So it's important to understand that it says in addition to aspirations are unfairly cast upon Ivanov because he's a programmer, but this is not an unusual profession for a chess player. It's true. Here I agree, because being a programmer or not being a programmer has nothing to do with finding the right scheme of cheating. In my opinion, however, or at least what I've heard, essentially there is another guy, there's a helper, who is, in my opinion, the base of all that. So I believe that he's come up with that sort of a scheme, and Ivanov was just the executor, so he was actually the player who executes the moves that the computer was suggesting in that hotel room, or whatever the laptop or the computer with the engine running was. Another interesting comment is, it doesn't really take much to see he was cheating. Haven't you noticed this black he played the most varied theory-loaded variations? Right! Take a look at that. In every game he played, he chose a different opening. Now, nobody does that. You can't have that knowledge to play a different opening against a different grandmaster. Some people will say, but okay, he was prepared personally against each. Again, that's not quite likely, because a grandmaster from that rank can play many different things, in meaning of, okay, they have a repertoire with a couple of openings, so it's impossible to completely prepare against one line. But what you see out there in his games is a complete opening preparation. No offbeat lines at all. Who does that? You see, even when I play, I have a very sufficient knowledge of opening ideas. Even then, sometimes I miss certain things. See, like for example, sometimes I don't remember a line, or sometimes I just the opponent throws me off with some certain line that was just not in the theory or in the line that I studied. It always happens. But seeing 100% perfect theoretical knowledge and ideas when at the same time you're playing different openings, that doesn't happen often. One of the other comments was like, I don't see how you can even publish this article. There's zero evidence a master level player has one tournament where he plays a few hundred points above his rating. Statistically, this is quite possible, I would think. Yes, I would say that the evidence are pretty clear, although we're not going to go to court and try to prosecute this player with that. Essentially, every chess player can understand what this is about, or at least every strong player knows what this is about. It's possible for a player to win quite a few hundred points above his rating, but not in that manner. See, what my problem with this player and his games is not so much that he won the 2600 Grandmasters. The problem that I have is the way how he won those games, and above all, his actual play very short prior to the actual tournament. That is what really raised those suspicions, because the strong players, looking back at their games, they just saw that they were quite unnaturally outplayed, essentially by a player who neither has this training nor understanding to make anything similar. Now, once again, some will like an immediate proof and doubt that. Absolutely. I mean, that is possible, and everybody can understand that case for itself. I'm just saying, sharing my own opinion in a way I understand it from a point of perspective of a player who's been playing chess all his life so far. And I can actually tell you that, I mean, this is not a personal attack to Mr. Ivanov or anything similar. It's just a way to show that there was some sort of cheating, and obviously that cannot be proved physically. And even if there is a physical proof, even if there is a photo with his camera, some people will still doubt it. They'll say, okay, this photo is where did you take it from? You know, there's always a way to put the facts in a different way. The truth is, however, that I believe there is a serious problem, and that problem must be resolved. But we'll get there. Now, let me actually answer a few questions that were raised by a Bulgarian player who recently contacted me with a few questions on how I will explain certain things about that game. Now, this player was asking about Ivanov's results in the tournament in Benador, Spain, that took place sometime before Zadar, and essentially that was a very interesting tournament where I believe that an engine was still used. Nevertheless, the performance was very unreliable. Like, we have wins against 2200 players, loses versus 2200 players, sometimes brilliant, sometimes terrible play, blunders, and almost anyone who sees these games, I'm gonna attach a PG file with those games in the comment to today's video. But basically, anyone who sees them is gonna say, okay, well, that's pretty normal, right? One thing that you're gonna see in those games is that essentially the engine used was much weaker. I mean, there was an engine because it fits in with with some of the little older engines, essentially, and that's why I believe that the engine used there was weaker. But that was a test. You see, before you go on to a big tournament with a great prize fund, you must test the technology. And you choose a tournament which is relatively weaker, like that tournament on Benador with relatively weaker opponents, where you basically try to see how it works. And in some games it worked perfectly because he was able to get completely winning positions again with totally computer moves. But the truth is that at a certain point there were these so-called glitches. This means the signal from the receiver, the sensor or so, it just didn't work in the right way. So essentially what happened is that there were certain glitches, and as a result, terrible blunders in completely winning positions. You can see that. Check out some of the lost games out there. From what positions they were lost. They were completely winning positions, and then there was suddenly a completely illogical move, and that was because of the mistake. And for example, if you say 4-4, that means D4. But if there is some sort of an error or a mistake, you say 4-5, it means a completely different move. And if you play that kind of a move, or you misread the actual sign, then you lose the whole game. So that's pretty much what I believe happened. That tournament was a test for the Zadar. That's the way I understand it. Now, another thing that I was asked is, isn't it possible for this player to remember all those lines and variations and beat the grandmasters that way? Now, as a really experienced player, now I'm not saying I'm a grandmaster because I'm not. I'm not even an international master. I'm just having a rating of 2400, and I have a good experience with playing strong players and a pretty good level of understanding of the game and how grandmasters think. I'm going to tell you, no matter how good memory you have, it's impossible to remember all the game. And some people say, but the variations were quite theoretical. The problem with me in these games is that they were immediately won at the early middle game, and that's something which has to be taken into account. So they were won as soon as the opening was over. We do have that kind of a sequence of very powerful move in an untheoretical variation. Now, this is a situation in which you cannot know what your opponent is going to do. Okay, this theory, that's fine. The theory ended, and then we have a little bit after that, we have an amazing sequence of moves, even after the middle game has begun, and that's not something you can remember. Some people say, but okay, there are great ways to remember everything. Now, if you can calculate the whole chess and remember it at the same time, now I'm going to say that's possible, but that's practically impossible from any logical perspective, not at least at this point. So remembering is not really another comment was that the computer was suggesting one of the three things that he played, so this shouldn't be played, right? I mean, it's like, okay, if that shouldn't be played, then what is that kind of a game? Well, my problem wasn't so much that the move was within the first three. My main problem is that the match was always with the first move, okay? So we have the strongest possible move played by an engine, not by a human analysis, not from a human perspective. And most of these moves look illogical initially because they don't follow any plan. They don't have any much sense. Some people looked at my comments and they said, okay, but Valeri, you're talking about opening. Now, when I made my previous video, I was talking about opening only from my own perspective, about showing certain logic about the opening play. Some of them were theoretical, and I agree. I made it so that I do my previous video a little more interesting. Yet, the major part that we must take into account is the middle game, because opening is clear, and yet middle game you can never learn, in meaning you can never remember a sequence of moves that can happen in 25 to move 30, because you just don't know how your opponent is going to go. You see, in the opening there is a huge chance for you to know what he is going to do, but in the middle game the options become a really big amount. Again, I'd like to say that some people would not agree with me, and probably the main reason is because, you see, in order to understand why it's impossible to have all these things, like the main proofs, which are computer match moves, like difference in understanding, and just a different level in playing, and many similar things. People will not be able to understand it, because in order to understand them, you must really have that experience of learning all those yourself and knowing how difficult it really is to do all this. Like, remember opening theory, understand the positions a bit better, follow the logical moves that anybody would understand once they're shown, but it's harder to find in the real game. See, so all these things may somewhat be understood by lower rated players, but I'm saying that the majority of the chess masters are going to get through that very clearly and agree that there are just too many bad coincidences out there that are not proving this player's innocence. Now, I don't want to judge, because I'm not a judge, and obviously this is just my own opinion, and that's why I'm making a video on YouTube and so. But I'd like to mention a couple of things that can further prevent any sort of similar situations, because this is just one player who's doing one thing in one tournament, and we don't know even if he's behind all this. You see, as I say, in my opinion, he was just the executor. So essentially there was someone else who suggested that, and what happens? Even on another tournament, we have 5 more like this. I mean, we can probably catch one guy, but what if there are 5 more, 10 more, 15 more? If any tournament has even like 3 people like this, this is going to be a mess, a big mess, and chess tournaments will be a terrible situation to play on. So what I'm going to actually recommend is that I believe the problem is quite serious, and the federations as well as the organizers must take that quite seriously, and most probably introduce that idea which I suggested in my earlier video, to use jammers. You see, the jammers are not that expensive, yet one jammer can at least prevent a signal transmission in like a couple of 100 meters. And if there are a few jammers for the whole tournament, it will prevent any possible signal coming from one side and the other. And I think this is a really good solution, as this is going to prevent any possibility for anyone to cheat except of get out from this chair and move away from the hole. But when he does that, again, after a couple of times, I'm just going to call the arbiter, and he will force that player to sit on his table until the game is over. And that stops it. Just following a couple computer moves by getting out of the hole, that won't help. You see, following a sequence of 10 or 11 computer moves, that will make a difference. But just 1 or 2, okay, if it's in a critical moment, it could work. But again, I have to admit that in order to get to that critical point and really be able to convert your advantage afterwards, you must be an experienced, a very strong player. So this is just, jammers will prevent any players who are not having the good level of understanding and the right level of play from using any sort of fraud in order to take away the efforts and preparation, the real deserved success of some experienced grandmasters who've put a lot of time in order to prepare for similar tournaments. So I hope with my clarification I can make the conclusion that this case is probably going to repeat if no actions are taken, and I advise all of you to seriously consider my recommendation on introducing some anti-cheating system, and that can be made as soon as possible so that we don't have more people like that who are going to use the same tools, and then it will become very difficult to play real chess and to enjoy the game as much as we do now.